Welcome to Kibbe on Liberty. We get to talk to Chad Prather, the cowboy philosopher, and we're going to talk about whether or not conservatives are actually secretly libertarian, what American tolerance is really all about, and yes, we're going to talk about penis hats. Yes, penis hats. It's going to get weird. Check it out. Is that there really aren't any rules,
right?
So you're kind of allowed to do whatever you want.
It's kind of the way we do it.
Yeah.
Now we got a way to define it.
But this is also like one of the rules is that this is a drinking show.
Yeah.
But since it's before noon, I thought we'd pour it into a coffee cup so people didn't know about it.
People won't think we're actually alcoholics,
right?
Like we are.
But it's noon somewhere.
Yeah, it is, and so I've just decided that I use the airport's example. That's the one place they just don't judge you if you start drinking early in the morning.
That's right. Well, you got to drink at an airport. So this is Colorado whiskey. I don't know if you've ever had Stranahan's, but it's one that I like.
I have. I like it. I don't think of myself as a whiskey snob, but I do drink probably way too much whiskey. Cheers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible to drink too much whiskey. Actually,
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with that phrase.
Yeah, I thought about that. It kind of caught in my tongue when I said it. No, I drink whiskey like most people drink beer or wine. I don't. You're a beer drinker though, aren't you?
Yeah.
Big beer drinker. I'll have one or two every so often. My wife's the beer drinker. She's a cheap beer drinker though.
Yeah. Well, I judge those people.
So. I know you do. But what I've never understood is people who go into the craft breweries and they start asking for they'll have 300 beers on the wall and they're reading through the things and they've all these weird wild names and it almost feels like it's weed but for beer.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, dog's crazy head. That sounds delicious." You know what I'm saying? Like, all I know is it's an IPA and some weird name. That sounds
not
delicious.
That you've ever been at a weed store, but you just described it perfectly.
Oh, a time or two. We were in Vegas at the dispensary out there because we were doing an episode for my show, Humor Me, that actually comes out, I think, this week about marijuana. And so we went to the dispensary out in Vegas, 45,000 square feet. I mean, they're making so much money out there that they're having to figure out things to do, like put digital floors down that react when you walk on them.
Yeah.
There's drone shows in the sky.
Yeah,
They're adding another 100,000 square feet. I'm like, hey, man.
We did
cannabis business, hemp business is good.
Yeah, we did a show right after Vegas legalized recreational marijuana, and my goal was to sort of normalize the industry because whatever your preconceived notion is about it, it's really a small business guy that's trying to provide a service and make a profit, and a lot of his customers aren't reggae stars; they're grandmas that are trying to get out of bed in the morning, so they use CBD and stuff like that to do that.
Yeah.
But
I was talking to a guy the other day who came back. It's one of those typical stories you've probably heard it a million times, and I don't ever want it to get stale in hearing, but it's one of these guys who came back from war, a lot of issues going on, and started using cannabis it really changed his life. And we've heard these stories over and over and over again. But something he said that was profound about that one was he said his father came to him and said, I shouldn't have to fight the law just to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
100%. I'm one of those terms you probably hate. I'm always still trying to figure it out. One of those conservatorians that I'm there on the right, but again, to each their own. I mean, what can I do? I mean, I can't legislate morality. I can't block immorality. Things are, and again, there's a lot of things that I think we've perceived as immoral that are amoral. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just people living their life,
Yeah, but that's I look at the data and conservatives and libertarians and anybody that doesn't really want to dictate the terms of somebody else's choices in life. They're all coming around on cannabis, and I think it's particularly outrageous that our veterans, guys that have been through hell and back, they get back here and they're dealing with issues, and some political asshole says, no, you can't do that.
And that's the thing. I mean, you got guys who are coming back and they're on 20 pills a day. Your body can't regulate and heal itself when you're numbing it to that point.
Yeah.
So there has to be some natural remedy to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we came back. I think we spent about $1,100 that day in Vegas.
You actually brought stacks of 20s in, right? Because you have to pay cash, right?
No, they'll actually take a debit card at that one. Most places are cash, but they would actually take a debit card.
Okay.
But no, then I'm reading up trying to figure out how you travel with CBD oils. I'm like, are we good? Are we okay? And I'm like, probably not, but I'm taking them anyway.
Yeah. Yes, so. some are and some aren't, and there's all sorts of.
Yeah.
I hate the ambiguity of it, but the concept of my show, which is fairly new, is I wanted to have almost everybody and anybody on. I'm a libertarian. Everybody knows that,
sure.
but I'm trying to find the common ground and the things that hold us together, even if we belong to a different political team or we come from a different place. And I've had libertarians and progressives. I had a really cool entrepreneur from Senegal, Africa. But the one thing I haven't had on is a conservative cowboy. And I figure if I can normalize the rest of us, maybe we could even give a shout out to Flyover Country and see if there's even common ground with someone as crazy as you. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that's what we're setting out to do.
I figure I fit in good in DC in this colorful coat.
Yeah, like
I'm not all black and gray.
Did you pay for that?
Not even at Goodwill. I said, I want that. I want it just like that. And
so let's assume that my audience doesn't know much about you.
Mm-hmm.
You're comedian, humorist. What would you call yourself?
I've never thought of myself as a true comic or comedian because I'm not a joke teller. I'm a storyteller. Always have been. And so I'm 46 years old now. And I've always been fascinated by this lost art and concept of being a humorist. And so I go back to, some of the great writers of the past, and then even some of the great storytellers. And coming from the deep South, Georgia, where I grew up and went to University of Georgia, it was still at a time in culture where storytelling was a thing. People passed down their, this happened to Uncle so-and-so. And so, I can still tell story after story of my crazy family. I tell people, I jokingly say I had to get out of the state of Georgia to escape the family business of meth.
Yeah.
And I said, I got a cousin that got arrested at a cat fight or at a chicken fight, cockfight, for selling chicken salad sandwiches without a food permit. So, we did some pretty redneck stuff down there. But, it was always about storytelling. How do you pass that on? How do you tell it in a funnier way, a more entertaining way? How do you hold people's attention? And so that always fascinated me. And I was fortunate enough to get on radio and start doing that, and then some television stuff. And then social media virality, once that came along, things went viral. We experienced about 2.5 billion views in 2 years on just me kind of giving my observational thoughts about life. And for me, it was therapy.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to go see a therapist. I just figured I'll just put this stuff out into the cyber world and let them judge it.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get that quote unquote internet famous, which is a 21st century way of saying you're unemployed. You're just real popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But it works, right?
Yeah. And it's been fun. We went out on the road back in the first of 2016. And I said, well, let's see if we can sell some tickets. And I just started renting places, and people started showing up. And so next thing you know, we're represented out of Los Angeles, and we're sitting with TBS and ABC and CBS and Fox and all these guys, and you're in and out of the news cycles with Fox News or CNN and MSN over the years. So it's been a weird little journey.
Yeah, the your Wikipedia page says that the one about Southern culture, I forget what it was called.
Unapologetically Southern.
Yeah. But yeah. that wasn't by any means the first one, but that one got you on Fox and Friends, right?
Yeah, that was a big deal that I didn't even know happened because I had done that video about 6 months prior to it taking off the way that it did on national notoriety. So it wasn't one that was even on my radar because for me, like I said, it's therapy. I post them and then forget about it.
Yeah.
I'll have radio interviews or TV interviews who'll say, now let's talk about this video you did about Depends undergarments. And I was like, I have no clue. I have zero recollection of ever discussing, Depends undergarments with the world at large. So I put them out there and forget about them. And so they called me up. I was on my way down to Conroe, Texas to work at an event, speak at an event. And anyway, Fox and Friends, they said, can you be back in studio? So, my wife and I, we were thrilled. We were excited, because we've never had that kind of notoriety on that level. to do that. And so we got up at 2:00 in the morning to drive back to be back in a studio in Dallas. And so that was the first thing. But I really honestly had no idea the recognition and notoriety that thing was getting and what it resonated inside people who kind of felt forgotten.
Yeah.
You mentioned flyover states, and it's just folks who felt, less than and misrepresented and unheard. And so it kind of launched us on a career of being able to say the things that people want to say,
but
don't feel like they can say.
You probably tapped into that frustration long before Donald Trump did, because in this one of the early shows we did was a guy from Reason named Robbie Suave, and he's been trying to understand intersectionality.
Right.
And I didn't understand it at all before he spent a lot of time on college campus, and he's trying to explain to me all these silos, and they're ranked so that some sexual preference or some skin color or some religion or some ethnicity is ranked higher than another one, and in this inner web of intersectionality ranks people, but the one clearly the one category that doesn't count, or maybe you actually get negative points, would be to be white, Southern cowboy. Like that's 3 check marks against you.
It really is, and I go even further. I've said that if you're heterosexual white Christian male, even more so, because there's my gosh, University of Kansas is teaching courses now on angry white men. I mean, it's become a thing. So, I came out of and lived in and still live in the equestrian world. A lot of horses in my life, and that was the Western culture lifestyle was part of my life. But I was probably way overeducated for what I was doing. And so, it was funny. I said, I'm going to just be me. And it was a funny story. When I started all this stuff and kind of went into what I call the entertainment business, I called my wife. I was at the gym one day. I was not in the gym. I was at the gym. So there's a huge difference in that. I was just out in the parking lot, right? Yeah. Called her on the phone. I said, I'm going to go make a living just being myself. And she said, well, what's the street value on your personality? You're leaving a good job to do what? And I said, no, we'll see. I stepped out into nothing. But yeah, I said, I'm just going to go out and be myself. And I think that genuine nature of being able to just go out and say what people, again, what they didn't feel like they could hear. So I had several people who said, well, you'd get a lot further if you would take the cowboy hat off, because that's such a misnomer and an antiquated kind of thing, or people look at it and they immediately judge it. And I was like, no, that's what I want to be. I want to be known as that white guy with a Southern accent who sits in his truck and sometimes his dog's in the back seat. And let's see if people will get caught up in the veneer or if they'll actually listen to what I'm saying. And so I've tried to never be a flamethrower per se of slinging bullets and what I've always wanted to do is just start a conversation with people, get them talking. Unfortunately, with social media, what happens when people get to talking? They start to fighting. And
right.
Now, me personally, my depraved side actually enjoys that. So don't get me wrong. There's nothing better than stirring that shit up.
So you like triggering people?
But not in, and what I'm hoping to do is say, okay, look, here is a way to take what I think is common sense. We're going to wrap it in humor, a little tongue in cheek, make a little easier pill to swallow. Now, how are you going to digest it? And it's funny, most people I think over the years have digested it pretty well. They come back and they're like, we've created a dadgum fan base out of this thing.
Yeah.
And so, then on the other side, you have people who just can't handle anyone looking at them and saying, this is what I think is right. Or this is what I believe. Because they feel like they're almost being bullied because there's that sense of dogmatism. How dare you tell me something so concrete or black and white, or that you really believe that with conviction, when everything should be all about, it should be postmodern. It should be what I feel about it, and, kind of what the flow of the day is right now, or how many of these I've had.
Yeah.
But dogmatism has been lost.
Yeah.
At least the ability to hear it and think about it.
Yeah.
I think the ability to just be dogmatic and receive something from a dogmatic perspective has been lost. That's why people get triggered.
Well, I want to test your dogmatism and see how strident you are, in fact, because. And I've never done this on camera, but I'm gonna come out of the closet here. I live a very, very weird lifestyle. I've been married for 33 years. I'm heterosexual. I'm monogamous, and I realize that's super weird. And I hope saying this in public that people aren't super offended by that, but I'm not judging them, so hopefully they'll let me be that guy.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. I like to.
Oh, and I'm white. But that should be obvious. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're all those same things.
Yeah.
But I think that people look at that, and you're right. Intersectionality, that whole, because I looked at it and I'm listening. Things. It's like trying to take a sip from a fire hydrant sometimes, trying to pick up where people are standing on these things, these issues and these topics. Because again, what I think postmodernism brought us is this way of being able to define and redefine things at will, and well, this is what it means to me, and the idea of absolute truth is gone. And who we hear it from has to be the right vehicle. It has to be the right voice. It has to be the right tone, accent. It has to be the right softness. It has to be, it has to be from the right skin tone. What's the vessel that's delivering this thing? And, you want it to get frustrating, but we've got to find a way to come back to a place of knowing one another, a sense of community, discussing, debating, dialoguing on these things, regardless of where people are coming from, without a sense of offendedness from it. But I think that we have never felt a plight. I don't think that, especially younger generations, and I consider myself still in that, at 46, under me, and the millennials, I think, get a bad rap in some ways. Some they deserve. And then this Generation Z, there's some hope there. Most of my kids reside in that generation, so I'm hoping. But by and large, we haven't suffered any. We haven't had any pain. And therefore, I think the human soul cries out for a plight.
Yeah.
And we want something that identifies us as, this is what's been done to me. This is what's wrong. And really, we can't point to anything as 21st century Americans. Yeah, we can say 9/11, but that happened to a city of 10 million, and then over in D.C. The guy in Nebraska.
But even young people don't remember that anymore.
Yeah,
right?
it's not like daily we're dealing with somebody lobbing or driving a red Datsun up and it's rigged with explosives. We're not dealing with things like that.
Yeah.
It's do I want to use Amazon or go to the store and get what I need?
Those are tough decisions.
They really are. They really are. And now my wife is wanting to use the drone and everything, the Amazon. She's like, we got the Alexa. She's like, screw our invasion of privacy. I don't care. I need my Amazon.
Yeah, I'm a paranoid libertarian. There'll be no drone deliveries to my house.
I want to shoot it out of the sky.
Yeah.
No, I'm somewhat of a Luddite when it comes to that type of thing. But no, I think that's where we are. So to the point that we referred to a little while ago, to comedy. What makes it impossible these days? Virtually impossible to come out and just be a brazen comedian.
Right.
And say part of the job description is to mock and ridicule. That does not mean that I dislike you or disagree with you. I just want to point a light at some of the dark crevices of life. I believe stereotypes exist for a reason. They are grounded in general facts. They're grounded in general consensus facts. And so it's okay. But see, these days we can't stereotype anybody. What's funny to stereotype people? I mean, we talk about people watching. What the hell do you think people watching is? People watching is sitting in an airport and stereotyping people. We get entertainment out of that. I mean, how many times do we ever say that when somebody says, well, I just want to go to the mall. I just enjoy it for the people watching. What a bigot.
Yeah.
You just said you want to go stereotype people.
You monster.
You're an asshole.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thing is I look at these people and I say, we're just repackaging what we've always complained about.
Yeah.
So no, I think in the job description, you got to be able to mock, ridicule. And that's why I tell people, I said, look, okay, I'm going to say some things. And yes, I admit I say things wrong. I have foot in mouth disease, but I'm still going to say it because I don't know, since humor is so subjective, I don't know if you're going to like this or not. I'm at least going to show you the edge. I won't push you over it. But when I meet you, I want to see how far I can take you just to see where our relationship can go with each other.
Yeah.
And that's whether it's one-on-one or an audience. And so I'll push the envelope a little bit. Because if I don't find out, I don't know. And as a guy who wants to take people on that journey, because I think we can learn from things when we're enjoying them and entertained by them, they stick with us. But these days, people are, that it's so... I just apologize, right? I mean, I tell them right up front, I'm not apologizing. I'm going to make fun of you. I don't care if you're white or black, fat, skinny. tall, short, male, female, gay, straight. None of that matters. We're gonna poke fun at everyone. You know, the deal is we're not ridiculing. That's the difference. You're not ridiculing. You're not mocking someone. You're just looking at their life and saying, "Oh, why are you like this? You know, really? Is this the way we are?" And that's kind of where we are, but people get offended because they don't want that searchlight turned on them anymore.
Yeah, but a lot of your stuff's, you know, the first victim of your humor is yourself.
Yeah, you got to be self-deprecating.
Yeah, you're pretty tough on yourself,
Yeah.
and you should be.
Yeah,
you should be, because
trust me,
clearly
there's a long line of jokes here. Yeah, my family tree was a brush pile, man. I got it honest. No, but I do believe in being self-deprecating because I want humor that makes a point. But, you know, they'll say, you know, for every finger I'm pointing at you, I got 3 pointing back at me. And I've always lived with that. Had I enjoyed the success that I've enjoyed over the last few years, say at the age of 23 or 24, it could have ruined me. But thankfully, after having gone through a divorce and a very broken situation in life and trying to decide, do you just quit on life or do you pull yourself back up, I pulled myself back up and kind of created a life out of it. And, you know, this success began with me around 40, 41 years old after I'd had those experiences. And I could put a little more in perspective. Now, for me, I had no plan whatsoever to get into, say, politics. I was gonna avoid two things: politics and current events, because current events they go away too fast. Now I'm making all my money off of current events and politics.
Yeah.
So
and some of the hate that comes with that.
Yeah.
But so I think, you know, all the way back to Lenny Bruce, and we could go back further. You know, my theory about comedy, particularly in America. So I consider America to be an incredibly tolerant place.
Right. I agree.
And we figure out a way for people of all different stripes to sort of get together. And comedy was that place where we could poke fun at each other as a way of sort of opening the door to a broader conversation and understanding. Like if you tell a good Italian joke, in part what you're doing is normalizing and humanizing
exactly
Italians, right?
Yeah.
And we can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You can't say anything that offends anybody. And how does comedy function if it's not offensive?
Yeah, and that's the problem these days, and I think it's evidenced in a lot of our comedy specials we see, and especially those that tend towards the political side of humor or our late night talk shows. They're much more interested in applause than they are laughter.
Yeah.
So it's almost, can I motivate you to feel the way I feel? Which again, we're back to that esoteric experience of a crowd who's in there and then, yeah, this guy's saying what I want him to say, and he's saying what I'd like to say, but I don't know how. Versus, damn, he just told my mother to hide her purse because there was a black guy coming on stage. You know what I'm saying? We can't do those. We can't do jokes like that anymore. You know, Red Fox can't get on stage. Well, one, because he's dead, but he can't, you know, a guy like that can't go on and talk about having sex with fat women. You know, you can't have. You know, and Red Fox used to say, y'all knew what you were doing. You came in here. It says XXX on the marquee. You knew what you were getting. You know, Lenny Bruce and George Carlin, they were arrested for this. They were arrested for this type of free speech to be able to go out and say, you know, hey. And you know, you go back to Carlin's old bit of, you know, what the 7 main words you can't say on TV and the vulgarity things. And then you go back to Lenny Bruce, who Lenny Bruce would seem completely benign to most of us today. You know, but here he is in the 50s doing what he's doing and going to jail almost nightly for it.
Right.
To today, now I have a theory on some of this. Today, pretty hard pressed to find an insult comic on par with a Don Rickles. Brad Garrett is a pretty good one who does that. I've always been interested when people see Brad on a live show and they think they're going to see Robbie from Everybody Loves Raymond. Yeah. And he's in there, you know, telling her about her cankles and, I mean, just really going after him, you know. And they're like, that's not Robbie at all. He's like giving him the middle finger. So, you know, people have a hard time with stuff like that. But then I see others on the other side who are out there who are really pushing the envelope, really getting there. And my theory is, and I took this from my comedian friend Tyson Pfeiffer, we talked about it a lot. I think a lot of those guys were kind of grandfathered in before everybody got so damn sensitive. Like they were already doing those jokes and we loved them for it. So now it's like, Daniel Tosh, okay, he gets a pass because he's always been that way. Does he still piss people off? Yeah, because they're so sensitive. But God, they're sensitive. When Jerry Seinfeld, who is so benign in his comedy, says he won't go on a college campus anymore because people get so offended. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, we've gone back. The SJWs have gone back and psychoanalyzed every episode of Seinfeld, and every one is problematic now.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I was watching a clip from one the other day, and I was like, that just wouldn't fly today.
Yeah,
it just wouldn't fly. So yeah, that's why I say right up front. I've had times where I've come out wearing the vagina hats. I talk about, I'll get on stage and talk about how men need to have a foreskin rally. We can all wear turtlenecks and it would look funny on the bald-headed guys and, stuff like that. My thing is, like we should really just get like some big skin-colored, tubes and wear them on our heads and stuff like that. And I'm like, tell women, I'm like, I'm not scared of you. I mean, you complain all you want to complain. I've never done a show where somebody didn't send me a message who took the time to share a message and say, well, we were disappointed in the show last night. I mean, you talked about your penis. Well, yeah, I had a vasectomy. I wanted to talk about my penis. I didn't say my dick. Now, sometimes I will transition over and I'll say, well, speaking of little orange pricks, Donald Trump. And so, you'll do stuff like that and people are like, oh, no, wait a minute. I thought we were coming to, and so it just depends on how it hits me, but I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'll say, look, I got a mother-in-law, I got a mother, I got a wife and 3 daughters. There's so much estrogen in my household that I'm in cycle with them. So I'm not scared of any of you women. None of you. So Andrew Heaton, who has Something's Off with Andrew Heaton on Blaze TV and Blaze Media podcast. I whenever we've done shows together, it makes him very uncomfortable.
Did he place? Did he pay you to place that placement?
Yeah, I know, right? We had lunch yesterday after some stuff, and I said, I really do make you uncomfortable. He goes, yeah. He said, but I'm like a tall tree. It doesn't take much to push me over.
Well, he's like a woke libertarian,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So, but we should actually just pick on him for a minute.
Yeah, we really should.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a recent, for my podcast, we did some recent short episodes called Highballs with Heaton.
Yeah.
Where we, pour a cocktail of whiskey and then we'll draw a topic out of the hat and see if we agree or disagree.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the whiskey for 4 or 5 minutes and then 10 minutes we'll debate. And so we can get about 3 of those episodes in and we're pretty hammered.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, he comes in wearing I'm obviously in the cowboy hat, so he comes in wearing the top hat and the waistcoat, and I mean, the guy went to the baseball game the other day, the pro Heaton. He goes to the pro ball game, the Texas Rangers game, wearing his tie and his coat and his waistcoat and the whole thing.
Did he get his ass kicked?
He probably should have. He could probably run away though.
Well,
I'll tell you right up front, he ain't fighting.
No, he's running. He might use some sort of he might quote a libertarian economist as about the non-aggression principle as to why you shouldn't punch him at a ball game. But
well, the thing that pisses me off is when I start agreeing with him. He'll say some things, and I'm like, I just don't have the energy to disagree right now.
Yeah.
I mean, my convictions say otherwise, Andrew, but I just don't have the energy right now.
But that you used the word conservatarian, and I'm not wild. I know I have a lot of conservatarian friends. I might actually qualify as I understand the term myself, but it's a made-up word based on a made-up word because libertarian is a made-up word. It used to be that liberal was the word that we would use because liberal meant free, but the progressives destroyed the word progressive in the 30s and 40s, so then they stole our word, and then they started being liberals.
Right.
So none of these words make any sense, and even conservative anymore. I'm not sure if it's is it Trump nationalism conservatism? Is it fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government conservatism? I don't even know what that stuff is, but I think the fact that we had to come up with a word like conservatarian, I think, shows that we libertarians have done a very poor job representing what I would consider libertarian values. Yeah. Because part of it is just tolerance, not acceptance, but tolerance. Like you're kind of weird. You're from Texas. I don't understand it exactly, but I'm okay with that as long as you don't hurt me or take my stuff. To me, that's the entire libertarian ethos. And you were conceived in Texas, but born in New Jersey.
Born in New Jersey. Yeah, first 4 months of my life.
That's a burden you're going to have to
forever because I've got nonstop. People are saying, "Well, what does this guy know about anything?" He Texas my ass. He's born in New Jersey. He grew up in New Jersey. I'm like, no, I didn't grow up in New Jersey. This just happened to be where my mother was when she went into labor.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and I come from that. That's why I think for me, I came back and I'm unapologetic about what I am. So hence the, unapologetically Southern. I can only speak in the accent I've been given. Now, granted, over the years, being on microphone and on camera, I've tried to mute a lot of that. And for somebody from the South, I talk pretty fast. But back to your point, I've always looked at myself. I've never declared with any political party ever. And so a lot of people assume that I'm a Republican, and I'm not. I'm not a registered anything. And I've always thought of myself a little more as libertarian. And then, like you said, you've got all of these addendums to the description. And so then you start sitting back and going, okay, so now how do I want to label myself?
Yeah.
Because I've always been careful with labels. First of all, because with labels, and it doesn't matter what it is, good or bad, if I can label you, then I can put you in my mental box, and I can take that box and put it on the shelf. And whenever Matt Kibbe's name comes up, I'll say, oh, no, I remember the label. I don't want to deal with that label today.
Right.
I don't want to take that box down today. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that. I've tried to keep it as simple as I possibly could and just put it in layman's terms. And to say, don't hurt me and don't take my stuff is a pretty basic, thing. I catch a little flack because I am pro-life. I'm vocally pro-life. I'm very defensive pro-life. But, I've had people who say, well, I have to go back to what I said originally. You can't legislate morality. You can't, if somebody's going to do that, they're going to do that. It's just like suicide's illegal, but if somebody's going to do it, they're going to do it. And all I can do is support that person.
Same with drug abuse.
Same with drug abuse. If a person's going to do it, they're going to do it.
Same with eating too many Cheetos.
Yeah. Well, I remember when...
I'm talking to you, Logan.
I remember when... Charles Spurgeon met, it was Winston Churchill. And Spurgeon walked up to Winston Churchill. Spurgeon was the pastor of that huge church, the Tabernacle there in London. And he walked up to Churchill and he looked at his cigar and said, "That, sir, offends me." And Churchill took his finger and stuck it in his fat gut and said, "That, sir, offends me." So it's one of those, let's pick what I don't like about, let's pick your sin and focus on that. But you're right. But I don't care how fat Charles Spurgeon is.
Right.
Again, I'm back to people watching.
Yeah. And this is this to me is sort of the libertarian ethos is like, it's okay to pick on friends and neighbors about decisions they make that you don't make. Like you own a dog, and I think that's morally wrong. I think dogs are communists. They're constantly begging for a handout.
You got a problem, Kibbe.
But that's your lifestyle choice.
It's good stuff. I'm drinking more of it. You keep telling me all your nonsense.
Yeah. So I'll test this theory on you. I think I can bring you around. I think you're gonna put your dog up for adoption and replace it with a bunch of cats.
I'd be ruined.
Because I don't know if you can put a cat in the back of your pickup, but
not without injury.
Yeah. But cats are self-sufficient. They probably don't really give a damn about you, and I feel like that to me is the libertarian ethos.
I don't know if you saw it. It might be an old one. I just saw it this past week where the cat is hanging in the blinds, the mini blinds of the house, and he can't get out. And he says, "I know I've been an asshole to you most of my life, but I really need some help." I think that is such a cat. Yeah. Now, we've always had the dogs. We always had cats, but we always had, barns and things like that for the cats to go do what cats do and, kill mice and, just go out there and be assholes on their own general terms with each other. I decided on my second anniversary to buy myself buy my wife a kitten. My wife's never had a cat. She never expressed any desire to ever have a cat. She didn't want to own a cat. She had told me numerous times, do not ever bring home a cat. Unless it's a barn cat, do not bring home. There will be no cat living in the house. So on our second anniversary, which is the cotton anniversary, I decided to pick up a kitten that was soft, like cotton. And I named it Cotton, and I brought it home. So what's she going to do? Now she's got a cat, right? So that went on for about a year. All of the scrapes and the scratches and the claw marks all over the...
they will tear your house down.
Yeah, I mean, the doors, just tearing things apart. And taking control of the three dogs, because she owned the place. But she would like to go out with the dogs for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. And she'd just hang out in the yard with them, and then she's ready to come back in, right?
Yeah.
And so one day my wife let her out. She was kind of scratching at the door, wanting to go out and hang with the dogs. And 24 hours passed, and my wife said, "Where's the cat?" And I said, "Did you ever let her back in?" No, we never saw the cat again. So I learned my lesson on that.
So
no more cats.
do we think this cat got out alive, or do we just not want to talk about it?
You know, I think probably so. I think cat's probably living the dream at one of the neighborhood houses because it's a pretty good cat.
Yeah.
But again, what do people say? It's a cat that acts like a dog.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the characterization right there.
Well, that just means that the cat's not trying to kill you. Yeah.
They are fun to watch, though. They say they lower your blood pressure regardless.
But I'm here to help you. You've come up with this sort of contrived term, conservatarian, to try to fit into a spectrum that doesn't even make any sense. But I want to use language that you can understand. So I'm going to use country music to try to convince you that you're a libertarian.
All right.
The first is Lyle Lovett. You're not from Texas, but Texas wants you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's a live and let live attitude. It's sort of arrogant, like Texans think they're just a little bit better than the rest of us, but it's okay.
It's a humble arrogance.
You can come here anyway.
Yeah.
Probably a more important one is Mama Tried.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the values that define libertarianism, I wrote a whole book on it, which I happen to be here. I'm flacking my book today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. Where did I get that from? I stole it from your mom, and she stole it from her mom. And there's these basic values that are fundamentally libertarian that moms teach their kids from day one. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Get a job. Mind your own business. All of these things are the things that I would consider quintessentially American, right?
Right.
Are they conservative? Maybe. Are they the same things that liberal moms teach their kid? Probably. They're just American. They're just common sense. Did you buy that?
Yeah, I go back to what I was saying earlier. I think to the degree that you can keep it as simple as possible, I think that's where it's right. For instance, we've used the adage of a bird with two healthy wings, and you got a right wing, you got a left wing, and you kind of want to get in on the body of the bird. I think we make it a little too complex of where on the wing we sit, when really and truly common sense makes a huge difference if you just apply it.
For some reason, when you had me on your show, I made it not simple at all. You asked me about socialism, and I started quoting Austrian economists and very much freaking out your cohorts.
Oh,
what's that guy's name?
Party Foul Steve. Yeah,
he was
out. He was dead to the world.
Yeah, I think he might have actually taken a nap.
He said, "I don't have a clue what was talking about."
Yeah.
That's why I asked him. I said, "You read much Friedrich Hayek?" And he's nope. We don't keep him around for the book smarts.
Yeah.
But no, you go back to
now that there's tolerance right there. Like,
well, exactly.
It's sort of a special needs
situation. Yeah, very special needs. We got to talk in very, very small words when it comes to Party Foul. But he knows that. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of him. He can take it. But hey, look, Jesus said, "Do unto others as you'd have done unto you." I mean, I think that's pretty libertarian.
Yeah,
that's pretty cut and dried, and pretty simple. I've always looked again to that, and we think that we can tell someone, okay, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Whether it's government, whether it's religion, whether it is, whatever civic organization you may be in, well, we're not going to do this and we're not going to do this. And I just find that when you keep pointing at things, that tends to be where people look, and that's what they focus on. And I think that rather than pointing at freedom and liberty, that we have, and having that conversation and pointing to what, because I think that was what I asked you when we started with that podcast on my episode is, do you think we're free? Do you think we really have liberty? Because I think there's a lot of people who are disenchanted out there with America and thinking, well, we don't really have freedom. But as a guy who spent 20 years in third world countries where you have to get your papers checked every time you cross a border, or there's a guy with an M16 who's holding you up and may or may not let you through this one little pass gate or something like that, you start to realize the difference between what I think is freedom versus what I think is liberty, and I think they are two different things. I may be free or not free to do certain things in this country, but regardless, I still have liberty.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, young people in this country don't know what government oppression is all about. I just got back from Belgrade, Serbia, speaking to about 800 libertarianish kids, and I've spoken in the country of Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia, all over Eastern Europe, and the difference between them and us is that they have an uncle or a mom. Somebody was killed by the government not so long ago. It's part of their family history. They know those stories, and they were largely oppressed for doing things like speaking their mind, like trying to run a business, and things that we just take for granted here. So I do think that part of our challenge is just getting people to know that we have both freedom and liberty here. We're pretty much free to think what we want and do what we want. There's lots of things that the government's doing that it shouldn't do that oppresses that, but generally we're free to do that, and I think one of the things that libertarians have failed at is drawing a very clear distinction between a House committee vote on 5-4 that decides that you can't do this versus a church or a community or a civic organization or a family that's sort of saying, there's limits to your behavior. Yeah. And it's based on what your mom taught you, and those are very important social institutions, but they're not implemented at the point of a gun,
right?
And that's what holds civil society together. And libertarians spend so much time talking about individualism and I want to be myself, leave me alone, that we forget to say that the bounds of liberty is held together by these civil institutions that have worked for hundreds, thousands of years.
Right. Yeah, and I almost see that people really want to try to come to a place where where are the fences, where are the boundaries, how far can I go before I'm in trouble? Like, where's the limit there? How free am I? I think if we realize how free we are supposed to be and designed to be, it's dangerous, it's deadly, because powers don't like that. The control factions really don't like a free people, a truly free people. And so I think they spend time exacerbating the emphasis of the fences and the boundaries, that we focus on those so much that we don't realize that, hey, there's a pretty big pasture in here for us to graze in and do the things that we like. Until you start instituting people who want to make the fences smaller. And I think that's what we have, and I think that's what a lot of people are frustrated with.
Yeah.
On both sides, regardless of the political spectrum.
Well, I would emphasize both sides. I feel like our current politics is kind of a tribal war between two sets of people who have different sets of values, different geography, maybe different skin color. I don't know, but if the idea of politics is to make sure that we control the presidency and make sure that we control Congress so that we can impose our way of living on the other guys,
right?
To me, that's tyranny.
Right.
To me, that's a recipe for tearing apart what makes America America. And I really don't like that. And I try to, which is one of the reasons I emphasize my libertarianism. I don't belong to Team Red or Blue anymore. I'm like, I would love to live and let live. Well,
I think that's my personal opinion and conviction is that's where we all have to come to, one way or another. Because I don't want to live out on the wings. I flew here last night in a plane. I didn't fly on the wings. That doesn't mean I'm a centrist or a moderate or I'm in the middle of the road on everything. I have convictions and opinions on how things should be. You take my kids. I tell people I've got 5 kids. They're doing well. 2 of them are off at university settings, doing great. Which can be a little scary sometimes, but people say, why did your kids, how did they come out so they're smart, they're individuals, they do their own things. One did ballet, another one was published, another one builds computers and has an engineering mind. We never pushed them to conform. We never pushed them. If they don't, I played baseball. If they don't want to play baseball, don't want to play sports, don't play sports. That's you find you.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, well, it wasn't a matter for me of trying to teach my kids right from wrong. I wanted to teach them a value system. So if they learned a value system, then they would learn what would be good for them and what would be bad for them. Now, what was good for one might not have been good for another one, but they're individuals. And so it was up to them to interpret their personal circumstance, situation, and conviction of what they value. And then, yes, if you value not drinking and driving, you're going to say no to drinking and driving. You're not going to go do it. But you got to value that. It can't just be, well, that's wrong, and I don't want to do it. And I think some of that has come into American politics today, is I've got to do this, I need to do that, because someone has told me that I've got to toe a party line. And I don't believe in that at all. I think we got to come into that place where you say, look, I got a conviction about this, but I'm not going to try to cram it down your throat. Because that's always been my issue, which is always why I've identified more libertarian than anything else, because I've said, look, I don't care what you do. I don't care who you sleep with. I really don't. As long as you're not, creating victims through your actions, which is ultimately criminal, or trying to get me to do it through some form of legislation, I don't care what you do. And so, there is that element of people feel like they have to be a part of a party. They have to be part of a community that belongs. I hate that we've lost the idea of critical thinking and the ability to take some diametrical, differing things that tend to come together and make them work. I'll go out and do these comedy shows and I'll riff on Donald Trump. Why not? Well,
you can't not at some point.
Why not? And I'll have people go, oh, and I'm like, don't owe me. I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
But the problem is you've gotten so blinded by towing the line and walking the fence that you can't even come out and think critically anymore about that. What I'm telling you from a humorous perspective is true.
Yeah.
And it is funny. You feel dirty by laughing at it because you have so aligned yourself with a certain party or a certain way of thinking. So this whole Trump phenomenon kind of took me by surprise. Back during the primaries in 2016, I said, I feel like we're trying to pick which venereal disease we're most okay living with for the next 4 to 8 years. And then here we come, you got...
By the way, that's the definition of presidential politics.
That's what it is. So, I was getting a tire replaced on my truck one day, and this old guy pulls up in his red Mercedes convertible. And he says, he just gets out, total stranger. He goes, who you voting for? And I said, well, I'm trying to decide. He goes, well, let me tell you who's going to change it and do it all right. It's going to be good. And this is the guy right here. And he points at his Trump bumper sticker. And at the time, I was like, come on, come on. But I had no idea that the faction that exists out there, some of these people are rabid. Like my mother, there's 2 men in history you don't mess with. One's Jesus, and the other's Donald Trump. She loves him.
Usually in that order.
In that order. You hope anyway.
Yeah.
But no, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
My mother, whenever I've been on Fox News, she's like, don't you say anything bad about the president.
Yeah.
He watches.
Yeah. I was, and I told you this, I was a Rand Paul guy, and I was working on a Rand Paul super PAC, and I actually spoke on Rand Paul's behalf at the Iowa caucuses, and that was the day that I learned that the Trump phenomenon was far more deeply rooted than I appreciated. And I think it gets back to cultural identity. And it's odd that a billionaire who's Trump is the standard bearer for flyover country.
Yeah.
Or whatever we call that, conservative.
Yeah, here's a guy who's a playboy, billionaire, real estate mogul from Queens.
Yeah.
Who is odd to look at, comes from an eccentric past and parents. The most rapped about man in music history.
Yeah.
He's got all the women, he's got the wives, he's got the riches, the towers, the houses, and all this stuff. And you're telling me that Earl, that works on transmissions out in Lincoln, Nebraska, is identifying with this man.
Yeah.
And saying he's going to be our champion. He's the guy that we're going to get behind. I don't care how many peas he's grabbed. I don't care, how many wives he's had, how many times he's cheated on. I don't care if he paid off a hooker for $135,000. I don't care. He's my guy.
Yeah.
That's weird to me.
Yeah.
That's weird to me. That I get it, But there's no logic that makes me be able to explain it in a way that others who don't get it are going to understand. I can't give you an aha moment. Not about this situation. I just can't.
I mean, I didn't honestly understand it even that day because I had been a Tea Party organizer and I thought we were building up to this idea that someone like Rand Paul, but there were other guys. Yeah. You know, there was Ted Cruz and Scott Walker and other interesting Tea Party elected officials in that presidential field. But I think it goes back to your the success of your YouTube video, Unapologetically Southern. People were feeling like their way of living was disrespected.
Right.
And one of the very first things that candidate Trump did is he went to the National Tea Party convention and he said, "No, Washington doesn't respect you guys. Yeah. Go back." And he's like, these people don't give a damn about you. And he filled that void for people. And you know, maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but they feel like they didn't have a home in our national politics, particularly in this tribal warfare where one side has to defeat the other side. Yeah. And so they chose a fighter, and I don't think they care anything about his personal life.
Yeah. I really don't think they do.
Yeah.
And there's numerous examples throughout history that I could point to, but you know, we've done them ad infinitum, ad nauseum, and just look at what we've got. I mean, he comes in and he says, "I'm going to drain the swamp." Well, no one's ever trusted politicians.
Yeah.
That's our pastime. We don't trust politicians. They're not trustworthy. So he kind of went deep into that inner soul area where people always said, "I don't trust anything going on in Washington, D.C." And he said, "Well, we're going to drain it. We're going to get rid of all of that stuff." Now, I heard that and I thought, okay, sure. I mean, it's a pretty deep abyss in Washington, D.C.
Well, I heard it as complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But because most politicians promise they're going to come in and clean things
sure,
up.
Sure.
And it never really works out that way. And I'm still not sure that it's not bullshit. But I hope for America, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, to the degree we continue to see the bullshit, I think it's bullshit. I mean, it's still there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could smell it, it's still there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to. I mean, good God, if you can't look around yourself right now circumstantially in our government and say, "Well, this stinks."
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
It's the essence of it.
maybe as it drains, you got to smell that rotten stuff down on the bottom. But I watched that whole thing and I was like, okay, this is the weirdest time in history that I've ever seen. And I asked myself why, and why can't this guy go in there and do what he's going to do? But see, now I have this philosophy, and I'd love to get your perspective on this. So I have this idea as I've watched things is I almost don't even feel like Donald Trump is real far right. I think he's kind of left to center in his heart, in his conviction.
And that's his history for sure.
Yeah, that's his history. Yeah. But I kind of feel like, okay, this guy's going to make now his rhetoric is one thing. The tweeting is a laser pointer to cats. I mean, they're running all over trying to catch what he's doing, and I can just see Don at 3:00 in the morning, with the white eyes and the fresh spray tan and the bikini lines and stuff, sitting on the toilet tweeting, and just,
I don't want to see that.
Crazy Chuck Grassley. Well, that's what I love about that Salon.com magazine that said that people are getting sex counseling because they feel like Donald Trump's messing up their sex life. If you're thinking about Donald Trump while you're having sex, man, you got deep, deep problems that need therapy. But no,
don't even plant that seed.
Don't even put that in there. I said, but
it's even messing up you right now.
I know exactly. I got to pull it back. I was thinking Melania. Get me back on track. I'm heterosexual too, Kibbe. So, and breathing with red blood. But I've said, but I think the guy, they have to villainize him to the point of making him a right-wing extremist. That now we're seeing the left and all these folks declaring now to run in 2020, they've gone off the reservation to the left. Yeah. I mean, just talking the most crazy nonsense that they can because they have to out-insanity each other. They have to out-left each other. And I think Trump, to some degree, if he is indeed playing 4D chess, I think that's been a pretty wise move.
Yeah, they're looking at his success and saying, okay, identity really worked. Of course, he was looking at Barack Obama's identity politics and saying, you want to go identity? I'll double down on that. Right. But but it's not at all clear that the radical authoritarian left, like the ones that really want to tell you how to live, which I think is a fairly new thing.
I think it is too.
I don't think the Democratic Party even 5 years ago was like that. I disagreed with a lot that they stood for, but it wasn't that sort of authoritarian lifestyle thing. I'm not sure that politics is going to work for the Democrats, because they will turn on themselves, and again, based on intersectionality, the big debate in Democratic politics right now is whether or not a white guy is acceptable, just because he's a white guy. It doesn't matter about anything else, and I'm not sure that that's the path to victory. There are white guys in this country that vote.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them. And I go back to, I think it was Bernie who the other day said, look, if the Democratic Party doesn't focus on more than just we want to beat Trump, then we're not going to beat Trump. And then over the weekend, Hillary Clinton came out with, who wants to take campaign advice from Hillary Clinton? But nonetheless, she did say, look, there needs to be a vision for the country. You need to know where you want to go. There needs to be this kind of ability to say, okay, this is what I value about America, and this is where I think we need to get to. And we scoff at that because of the source, but at the same time, what she's saying is you got to do more than just want to beat Donald Trump. Because
it's probably a red flag that she's the voice of reason.
A very
but she made
stiff, strong wind blowing that red flag. Yeah,
she made that mistake. There's this I don't know how would you categorize him, but I love his work. Jonathan Hite has done a lot on the conservative mind, the liberal mind, the libertarian mind, and he pointed out the day after the election, he pulled Hillary's first ad, the one that announced that she was running for president. And it was a beautiful rainbow of all these people from all these different parts of America, different identities, different skin colors, different ethnicities, and different religions. And the one thing that wasn't in that video was a white dude. And so she doubled down on identity, thinking that was the path to victory, and Trump played her. So maybe she learned that lesson. I don't know.
He definitely played her, and that was what he played. And I think that's what, in the last couple of years, I think that has really, really pushed the identity politics of making the big evil bad wolf, the angry white guy, because they know that that's the base that Trump appealed to. Those folks who said, no, we're tired of this. We're gonna defend ourselves. We're gonna have liberty at all costs, and we're gonna take our factories back and our car, manufacturers back, and we're gonna, forget China, and we're out of here, and we're gonna make money. And why shouldn't Wall Street be booming and those kind of things? Well, let's face it. The guy in the south side of Chicago who's living in the streets, he's not the guy who's worrying so much about what Walmart's or what Wall Street rather is doing.
Yeah.
And so Trump definitely did do that. And there are people out there who, so consequently, because they're responsible for putting Trump, that big, and I say that the campaign slogan for the left is Orange Man Bad. They're the ones that are responsible. And so they must be villainized. They must be punished. We had no idea there was this much white nationalism in the country and racism, and who knew that everybody was a member of the KKK? So suddenly everybody's, a Proud Boy or a Tiki Torch carrier or whatever, we're alt-right. And it's just gotten ludicrous on that. How do we come out of that? Can we come out of that? I don't know if we can in the age of social media, especially.
I don't know. I think and I have to give a shout out for us libertarians. I think the counter-revolution is going to be tolerance. It's going to be realizing that if you take
true liberalism.
If you take all of your disputes to Washington, where one side has to win and the other side has to lose, there's no upside to that brand of politics because that's not American. Like we actually believe that if you live in New York City, you should choose that, and that's a certain lifestyle. It's not like Texas. It's different.
Well, I look at this house. Okay, so the house you live in, old house.
Yeah.
It's. I imagine that for you to do anything here, there's probably a historical society. There are laws and
you can't
zonings that
imagine.
it boggles the mind, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If you wanted to renovate something, tear down a wall, tear down a fence, rebuild a wall. And then you have neighbors around here. They're equally, they have homes from antiquity, basically. And so you guys have to come together and say, okay, this has got to be done. Can we agree on this fence? Can we agree on this wall? Do I need to take it to the city council? Do I need to take it to the judge? Do I need that? Or can we just say, okay, this is what we can do. Now, can we come together and do this together? That's how we live our everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we live that on a larger scale?
Voluntary cooperation, neighbor to neighbor, from the bottom up, solving problems. No one's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Take a little bit of responsibility. It's work to get everybody together, but that to me is the American ethos, and it's pretty cool. We've done some great stuff that way.
I go back to when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and it was a nightmare, and it was a FEMA nightmare, and people just couldn't pull themselves out of that thing, and people were displaced, and they're still displaced, and New Orleans still hasn't recovered. And we're talking about something that was 14, 15 years ago. Then in 2009, a community like Nashville, Tennessee gets hit with a flood that just wipes out their lower downtown area, with 20-foot waters, and just devastated the city. But within a matter of 2-3 months, they're back at it because they pulled themselves up and said, we're going to come in here together, not wait on a federal government to send us the relief, and we're going to get this thing done because it's our community.
Yeah.
And I think to the degree that we can do that on any scale is where we're going to be successful, because then your cooperation and your growth is all grassroots. It's word of mouth. It's common. It's loving your neighbor as yourself. If we can go that far, it's walking an extra mile. When you're you take that parable of the extra mile, and Jesus talking about, if someone compels you to go a mile with them. Throughout the Roman Empire in those days, there were mile markers, that all those mile markers led to the center of Rome. And so any place that was under Roman rule, they had a mile marker. You knew how far you were at any given time from the city center of Rome. So here they were in Judah and Judea, and Jesus says, hey, give you a lesson from life, because if one of these Roman centurions is walking with his pack or whatever, and he sees a Jewish subject, he can drop that pack and say, hey, he can compel you. You got to carry this. And so here's a guy that probably wants to not carry that for a mile, and he had to be compelled to walk from 1 mile marker to the next. But what Jesus was saying is, tell you what, why don't you surprise them and keep walking, and don't drop the pack. Go another mile. And that's in a selfish society, in an instant society where things almost move at the speed of thought. I mean, we can send a text message to a satellite in space that gets reconfigured in the air and sent back down to yours in a matter of instants, and yet we're so spoiled, and we haven't experienced pain, and we haven't experienced persecution, no oppression. The idea of loving somebody else, serving somebody else, or even going an extra mile is it's a novel concept. But again, it's true liberalism. Yeah. It really is. That's why I love it when people say, well, Jesus was liberal. And I say, well, it depends on what you define a liberal as. You know? Was he a socialist? No. But he wasn't here to play political parties, because he can offend all of them.
So you're taking some of these stories on the road. Are you still on the road doing Star Spangled Banter?
Yep, I am. We do about 95 shows a year. We're probably going to switch things up here. I'll probably continue Star Spangled Banter through 2019, because we're starting to go back into a lot of the same cities and venues, because I don't do comedy clubs, I do theaters. And so, we on average, we'll see 1,000 people we've seen upwards of 3,500, which is for a white dude doing comedy in the 21st century is actually a pretty dang good crowd.
Particularly with that jacket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so this oozes sexuality, really, Kibbe. And so I even got my name in it. Look at there. Boom. Look at that. Look at the inside of that. Isn't that pretty? Right. I'm feeling good.
I feel like you're disconnected from your roots. That's pretty fancy. Yeah.
You got to get away, man. Got to get away. Forget they know you, change your name, all that stuff. But no, we do about 95, 100 shows a year. We have a blast all across the country. We'll take off. We're about to do a stretch of shows through the Pacific Northwest. We go to places. It's funny. We talk about the flyover states. We've sold out in Seattle. We've sold out in Portland. Sold out. We just did our 7th show in California of the year, and here we are just now into the middle of April. We've sold out around L.A., San Diego. Last year, sold out 4 shows in downtown San Diego. I mean, and my point is, even in those places like that where you would think of bastions as liberalism, I can do 2 shows in San Jose. People are so desperate for the non-crazy. They'll drive in. They'll get there. They'll come, I have, my company is pretty diverse in that, I got Party Foul Steve, who's a Marine, so we got the special needs people fit in, and we've got my agent is.
We're gonna have to give him a platform to respond to this. I think,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gay Cubano is my agent. My Jewish manager out of L.A. I got Bougie Sean, who's the only black dude I know with white privilege. I got Jason Hernandez, who I think is, who knows, build the wall. I mean, we're diverse, man. We look like a weird rock band when we come into the bar.
You're diversely offensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were in Salina, Kansas for a show a couple of weeks ago. It was snowing. We went into this deal, and I went into the bathroom because I came in the back door, and Sean and Jason, who produced Humor Me for BlazeTV, they went on into the bar, and I could hear live music playing, and I was listening through the wall, and I was like, is that band singing She's Got a Crap? She took a crap, and then I came out, and I walked, and they were singing She's Got the Clap. So I said, I don't think this is a bar for us. We'll go next door.
Tragically, I know that song. It's an AC/DC song, and I just admitted that. You're on BlazeTV. How do people find this profound wisdom? Like, people are definitely desperate for it.
Yeah. At Watch Chad is, of course, Twitter and Instagram. And if you get on Facebook and search Chad Prather, you're going to find me on Facebook and as well on YouTube. We've got a pretty solid presence there. I've got 4 different Facebook pages, which are all pretty big. And someone labeled me a political cowboy years ago. I hated that terminology, but it stuck. And then a modern day Will Rogers. And then I've had, CNN label me the pickup truck pundit. Because we did everything in the truck.
Yeah.
It was an easy studio. I could park it in the shade. I could control the sound, and nobody would bother me. And
there's no zoning limits.
No, it just became a thing. So, and then watchchad.com is the website. People can find me out there live, out and around the country.
Cool.
Fun.
Thank you. We'll get you out of D.C. before you get corrupted by the Death Star, which is only blocks away.
I know. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for watching Kibbe on Liberty. By now, you know this is the most important event of your week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell so you get notifications. Kibbe on Liberty, mostly honest conversations with mostly interesting people.